Evening. It doesn't feel like evening, it feels like really hot and bright outside still. Oh, such good faces in the audience. It's really beautiful to see you all. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with us tonight. I'm Dulcinea Lara. I work here. I'm a professor here. I'm a many generations member of this community. I'm a mother. I'm the daughter of two NMSU alumni, and I'm an educator. And I'm also the head of a brand new department of Borderlands and Ethnic Studies. Super exciting, and something that's been in the process here at New Mexico State for over 50 years. So we're very excited to stand on the shoulders of generations who have been asking for these classes, for these programs. So I feel really honored to be here with you and share that really exciting news. And there's so many of you in the room who have supported in direct ways and indirect ways, and just being here tonight shows support for this kind of work. So I want to start out tonight with a special introduction to set the tone for our gathering. I feel really honored and grateful to introduce a friend and the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Piro Manso Tiwa tribe, Diego Medina. He's an incredible artist, a writer, a curator, a cultural worker, and someone with a lot of passion for Borderlands Indigenous history. And I feel incredibly grateful that Mr. Ed Roybal, the cacique of Piro Manso Tiwa, is here as well. So I want to turn it over to the both of them and welcome them to share some words with us before we get going. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Dulcinea, and thank you, everyone. I know a lot of work has gone into organizing not only this showcase, but the effort of creating the Borderlands program here. And, when Dulcinea invited me to do an opening, a prayerful opening and an opening to introduce the context of why we're here, learning about the border, I thought about a lot of course, naturally historical things and events that led to all of us being here in the way that we are. And I think for me, prayer is something that's ongoing in the practice of everyday life. It's something that is kind of a really cool unbroken chain here. I like how Dulcinea said many generations her family's been here, because yeah, to enumerate the generations our families have been here is kind of a task that I'm not mathematically capable of at this point. But um, prayer is kind of an unbroken chain that links us all the way back to the creative force that brought us all here in the first place. You think about, me coming up here and being able to pray, and then of course my parents, their parents, all the way back to that animating force. And then you think about all of the originating powers that come to find themselves in homeland places and spaces of ceremony. And in particular, of course, for us, the Borderlands region, the Paso del Norte borderplex, and the area of Las Cruces, the Mesilla Valley, all this entire area from our Mogollon ancestors to our Northern Puebloan ancestors coming here and creating a space for prayer and education and community service to be a part of the ecosystem in the most holistic way and to play our part in being the spiritual balance keepers in the ecosystem with our practice of prayer. I mean, that's at the root of everything we do for our communities and why we have, the foundations of education, the purpose, the foundations of education in the first place, the purpose of it, being to create the best community members we can possibly create and carry that forward. So I'm really honored to be here alongside all of you to introduce this program and to talk a little bit more about the importance of why programming around the Borderlands and even beyond that is so important and critical to understanding who we all are and how we relate to one another. And so with that, I open with a different type of prayer, a prayer that honors, of course, all of the people who came before us and our ancestors here in this land. And then, of course, all of you being in here to acknowledge this space with us and know that it truly is land that was cared for by thousands of years by our indigenous ancestors, and that will continue to be cared for. And I'm really grateful, and I'll turn it over to Kasika Ed Roybal, of course, to say what he needs to say in addition to that. But oh yeah. Okay. I know you think it's a long time. No way. By the way, always generate on the line. It's always something like the way of looking at all relatives. But I was always taught that you the baby for all things. Well, four-legged, but without them you have life. Other the life. But without other having. But I'm always mindful of all this. So it's always nice. A long time ago. And one I thank you because I was always also taught by your presence how you fit one another. I think. So always do that. Family, corn, content, our person, what grandfather and grandmother gave. Like all the father and grandmother, all his life. Like I have the right power, but so the other direction that I'll be going to be the south, but south direction kind of in the area of the rainforest, gathered with everything, have life, that's what life, man life does something. They're in water. Then it's just falling. Left with it. Under but something has a rest. Open it. Falling time to call it for the life. Say all the rain there. For the time, all the time. Yeah. Water there life. Also something well. All of it. Water. That's the victim. I have always before. But the process animals have direction and the animals act like so itself as rest is also represents generosity, fire and water also celebrate celebrate
Thank you, Mr. Roybal and Diego. That's a pretty powerful statement to invite everyone to be family. And what would that look like to live in that way? Thank you for that prayer. Thank you for setting the stage. Next, I want to invite Dr. Amu Devastali to offer a few words from her position as the esteemed chair of the NMSU Board of Regents. Regent Devastali is a femtor artist, painter, and philanthropist. Originally from India, she and her husband Rama, a physician, came to the United States in 1981 and lived in Chicago before relocating to Las Cruces in 1987. Devastali holds a bachelor's degree from Nehru University in New Delhi and a master's and doctorate in Soviet literature. While raising her family in Las Cruces, Devastali earned a Master of Arts in printmaking and a second MFA in painting. I see an artist strand going here. Devastali and her family have raised funds for many projects and scholarships over the years. She spearheaded efforts to raise private funds to help build the ASNMSU Center for Performing Arts and NMSU's new visual arts facility, Devastali Hall. She's also a funder of this project that you'll see tonight. And in the midst of all this service-oriented work, Regent Devastali also serves as our chair of our Board of Regents here at NMSU. Please welcome Regent Devastali.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I guess it's evening, actually. It's past 5. So thank you all for being here. And thank you, Dulcinea, for that introduction. I would like to start by congratulating Dr. Lara and her research team on receiving the New Mexico PED grant that allows her to work with New Mexico social studies and history teachers to identify gaps in the curriculum as well as the materials that are accessible to the teachers for instruction. I also want to thank the Kellogg Foundation for their generous support that allows Dr. Lara and her team to continue their work with the cohort to determine what needs to be changed, what needs to be added in the curriculum to make the instruction more relevant in today's world. Here at NMSU, we try to relate what is taught in our classroom to what is needed out there in the real world. At least I hope that's what we do. As the institution of higher education that prepares teachers to be future public education professionals, it is gratifying that this project to improve, enhance, and grow the culturally and linguistically relevant social studies and history curriculum has been entrusted to our very qualified and dedicated researchers. I'm sure, yes. I'm sure that, like me, you too are impatient to see what new and innovative lesson plans Dr. Lara and her team have designed for our K through 12 students. With that, I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy the presentation.
Thank you so much, Regent Devastali. I said to her earlier that I really appreciate her coming, and Regent Devastali said, you know, one of the regents has to come. And I said, no, they don't. And the way she talks about this work is authentic, it's genuine. And I really want to thank her for being one of the major leaders of this university. Thank you so much. Next, I want to welcome Victoria Tafoya to share a few words as the program officer for the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. Victoria serves in one of the foundation's priority places here in New Mexico to support thriving children, working families, and equitable communities. She works closely with colleagues across the organization to ensure integration and coordination of efforts with a particular focus on early childhood education. Tafoya has over 20 years of experience as an education professional, serving as a teacher for the Albuquerque Public Schools and an assistant principal, site administrator, and district administrator for Rio Rancho Public Schools. Tafoya also served as executive director of federal bilingual and Native American programs. Prior to joining the foundation, Tafoya was Director of Operations for Dual Language Education of New Mexico. She served as a dual language advocate, engaging all levels of education and educational leadership throughout the state of New Mexico. I'm really grateful that you drove down to come be with us here tonight. Welcome, Victoria Tafoya.
Thank you so much. Buenas tardes. What an honor. What an honor to be here tonight. This is actually my first time in 2.5 years, and I made it a priority to come here. I wouldn't miss this. On behalf of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, I'm honored to join you this evening for this showcase. Cherishing children by honoring their languages and cultures is at the heart of transforming systems in New Mexico, and children are at the heart of everything we do. Our combined aspirational pursuit insisting all children, regardless of racial, ethnic group identification, skin color, physical traits, will have equal opportunity to experience well-being in a just society. At WKKF, we bring a racial equity lens to every grant we make from the foundation. Not only is this particular project critical, but it also really does bookend a narrative. The curriculum, storytelling, the associated training that will come for educators is part of racial equity and racial healing. We must understand that the kind of profound systemic transformation we're working towards doesn't happen overnight. And that's why progress can't be a moment. So let's make this a movement. Transformation requires committing to long-term, sustained effort to deliver on racial equity and redesign our community so children and their children and their children's children can thrive. This work is about respecting and honoring each and every child, their identities. Long-term, our collective commitment to share the lessons, share the learnings, learn from our learnings, and engage in continued design will have demonstrated impact for many generations. It's through your and our deep-rooted commitment that children are becoming empowered and are learning the critical importance in of their personal identity and what that holds for passing down history, values, beliefs, and a worldview like none other. No doubt, culture is life in New Mexico. I want to congratulate the university on establishing the Borderland and Ethnic Studies Department. This truly is transformational. 50 years in the making. Thank you to the leadership, Dulcinea, Nick, for creating a path forward for continued community engagement, curriculum design and support, and elevating community voice. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having us this evening.
On that note, 3 years ago in 2019, many of you sat in this room when we hosted, I don't know, the Martinez and Yazzie legal ruling in 2018. We all sat together and a lot of you were in that audience talking about what do we do now? What are the implications? There's this big legal ruling and this big call to action. What do we do? And so here we are 3 years later as New Mexicans invested in education and elevating peoples in our state, our region. Tonight, you're going to meet a lot of people up here who are incredible, who have been working together for years to generate the materials, practices, and resources needed within our complex and diverse classrooms. And while we're all really dedicated and hardworking, some of us traveling from afar with babies, hey Hava, and some of us bringing babies with them, and all of us committing Saturdays for the past year on Zoom, committing our summer days. We really can't do the work without the generosity of our funders. And so I would love for you to stand and be recognized if you're here representing these organizations. The supporter of tonight's event, of course, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, Victoria Tafoya, thank you so much. The New Mexico Public Education Department, representative. Mr. Carlos Avila. The Devastali Family Foundation Fund, Regent Devastali, thank you. Engage New Mexico, Lori Martinez. And the Daniels Fund, I don't know if anyone's here, but Lori Martinez representing for the Daniels Fund as well. Thank you for believing in our projects. It takes a leap of faith to say, let's try something that hasn't been done before, and for helping us build our capacity. We can promise you that your funds are going to be used in ways that amplify New Mexican voices in equitable ways, that provide opportunities for local artists and businesses in our local economy, and that highlight the significance of New Mexico on the national and global scale. Thank you so much. And for those in the audience who would like to participate in supporting Borderlands and ethnic studies, I don't know what to do with QR codes, but I'm grateful that Allison Layfield. Allison, thank you for creating this QR code. I think you can take a picture of it. I also printed out a copy at each of the exits in case you'd like to contribute. There's also the website and also my email address. We could always use more support, of course. Yeah, so that's the pitch. I wanted to pass around a basket, but that seemed inappropriate. Oh, go ahead. And we want to have our youth that we've been working with for about a year offer gifts to our speakers. You'll be meeting our partners here when they come up and give their presentations, but incredible youth, the future. I've learned so much working with them. Carmen Ray and Andres, thank you. And thank you for our speakers, our introducers. This is our team. This picture was taken last week when we all had a lot more energy. And so hopefully everyone in this picture who participated can stand up right now. We are 10 educators spanning from Cliff, New Mexico to Carlsbad, New Mexico, and including Las Cruces, Gadsden, and Alma de Arte. Please stand up. This is our team. When we were asked by the New Mexico PED to start working with teachers, we wanted to try to reach every single corner and reach small towns, rural towns, far east, far west, far south. I understand we have representatives from Las Cruces Public Schools, Gadsden Schools, and Alma de Arte tonight. So thank you and support these educators. And also Raices, our charter school here for early childhood ed. Thank you for being here. So this is a night of celebration. And okay, thank you. We also have incredible elected officials here who put the money where the projects are. So I want to thank, I know that Senator Heinrich's office is here, Sylvia Ulloa, and Representative Micaela Lara Cadena is here. And I'm very bad at these formalities. So if you're an elected official and you care to be here tonight, you're awesome. And please come talk to me after. I see my associate deans, Dean Murphy and Dean Lakey. Thank you so much for supporting. And everyone in here is a star. Best faculty, maybe you can stand up. It's not Dulcinea Lara and a team. It's incredible faculty that I've known for a long time. It's a labor of love. So I want to just talk quickly about why we do this and what our process was. The motivation for writing lesson plans that we all wish we had access to when we were young is intrinsic. And that's something we've been talking about all year long, is that all people want intrinsically to see themselves, to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. And right now in the society and the times we're living, there's a lot of polarization, and a lot of it has to do with not seeing each other. So that intrinsic motivation was really what kept us going on those Saturday mornings and last week and this week to get this presentation ready. Also, a lack of equitable, culturally and linguistically relevant classroom materials. This is something I kept hearing in all spheres that I was in, is like, great idea, love the idea. Where are the materials? Where are the books? Where are the films? Where are the resources? Where is the professional development training? So that lack is something we decided to address. And then, of course, the Martinez Yazzie versus State of New Mexico ruling, which all of us have some information about, really was a call to action. And so we're trying to respond to that in this way. And the new social studies standards that were introduced last year, this year, and should be implemented here in a few weeks. We thought, well, with the new standards, we have a real opportunity to provide these lessons. And we all know that we're living in a very complex and increasingly difficult society, and it's getting compounded, and we need these materials to be able to talk intergenerationally about where we go from here. Process. Las Cruces Public Schools, raise your hands. Teachers, administrators. Yeah. 5 years ago, Las Cruces Public Schools Board of Education unanimously passed an ethnic studies resolution. And at that meeting, I was floored, and the superintendent came over and said, okay, can you work with our teachers in your ethnic studies program at NMSU? And now we have one 5 years later. So we're about to get started, and we're eager to work with teachers. But I think, honestly, if it weren't for that courageous unanimous vote from Las Cruces Public Schools, I don't know if we would have been here as NMSU yet. So I'm really grateful. And then in 2020, the New Mexico Public Ed Department funded a study, Southern New Mexico Teachers' Perspectives on Culturally Relevant Education, where we met on Zoom and we had group conversations and talked about, what is it that teachers need? What do you need? What are you trying to do? How can we help you? And those conversations were incredibly helpful. And some of you are in this room who were part of those conversations. Fast forward to 2021, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation offers to support in writing these new lessons. And because of COVID, we started a virtual relationship for the past year, getting to know each other, building relationships. This work can't be done without relationships. We can try, but it's not sustainable without caring for each other. And so that's how we came together as a group, to meet and talk and share our dreams and hopes and fears. And when we finally met each other in person last Sunday, it was really beautiful and magical. And then this year, we just had our Summer Institute in person last week and this week. And the outcomes that you'll see tonight are new lesson plans, short films, classroom kits, and above all, that I feel in community with all the people that we've been working with, and that's really rewarding. This fall, we're asking our educators to pilot these lessons, take them into your classroom, try them, see what works, see what needs help, see how we can talk to each other and amend these, fix these, grow these, and pilot them and test them out. And then in the spring, next summer, we hope to create an online repository and just put these out there for public access. I see Jess Zubia in the audience. I want to give a shout out to the NMSU archives and the library for kind of opening up a brave space for reinterpreting our archives and our libraries. Thank you, Jess. And then the Summer Institute. So we got together and we made another overview of what's missing in the curriculum. We had incredible conversations about methods and approaches. Dr. Blanca Araujo, Dr. Brenda Rubio, Dr. Susana Ibarra Johnson. What does teaching culturally and linguistically relevant material look like in the classroom? We talked about templates and elements, Dr. Jeanette Haynes-Ryder, Dr. Blanca Araujo, these incredible colleagues I have here in the College of HEST, Health Education and Social Transformation, who brought to our awareness the New Mexico State University Social Studies template, the Pueblo curriculum template. What are the elements that are needed to create a good lesson? And not being from an education background, I was so excited to go get another degree in how to actually do this. I have some content knowledge, but not the how to. And so I'm really grateful for all the people who brought those presentations to us. And then there's a new category in the social studies standards, which is ethnic, cultural, and identity studies. And I bet some of you in this room were part of those conversations at the state level to insist and persist and say we're New Mexico and say we're a diverse state, a multicultural state, a bilingual, multilingual state, that it's long overdue and it's a shameful thing to continue to lack these elements in our curriculum. And so we really took advantage of that fifth strand, and we were really providing some materials to meet that call. NMSU archive and library resource, we had incredible presentations on how to look at photos and newspapers and how to reimagine, reframe what those artifacts mean and how we can reinterpret those. And then we had a fantastic art project. You can see the gallery along the wall here. I want to invite my colleague, Dr. Bodoni, up to speak about it for a bit, if you'd like. Please, Dr. Bodoni, our artist, maestra.
Thank you. So this is one of the projects that we completed during the Institute. And it was a Saturday morning when Dr. Lara and I were walking around the farmer's market, and an inspiration came. There was a bag, I think, was a cup that said, you know, owning your space or taking space. And the more I started reflecting on that phrase and what that really means, really resonated with me deeply, not only as an educator, as an art educator, a Native American Studies professor, but mostly just going back to being a classroom teacher and lacking the training and the things that I wanted to do back when I was a classroom teacher. But those fears of what to talk about in the classroom or what I couldn't touch curriculum started really sinking in. And then I started thinking about the teachers that we were working with for the past year, and meeting every meeting, just kind of getting to know each other, and then knowing our fears and our dreams and what we'd like to do. So I figured, let's put it down on paper. Let's take up the space. Let's put ourselves on a sheet of paper in those power poses and reclaim our voices, reclaim our spaces, and what does that look like? So everyone just kind of grounded themselves on a piece of paper, and we used words, we used colors, we used statements, but most of all, we put ourselves down. And when you do that, then you put something into the universe, and what we do from there is going to spread. So that was my inspiration. So please take the time to walk around and look at the meaningful mark makings that our educators put into their work. Thank you very much.
Dr. Bodoni led a few art workshops with us to really feel about this. This is knowledge, but there's a lot of emotion and feeling to centuries of not having spaces to have these conversations. And so thank you for your contribution in terms of art and making space for us to talk about how we feel in this work. It takes a lot of courage and dedication. So thank you, Dr. Bodoni. And then here we are today, June 30th, the showcase. So you're going to see local films. I want to again thank Engage New Mexico and the Devastali Fund for supporting the creation of local films. I think film media is accessible. I know I use videos in my classrooms. There's now TikTok and things that I will never grasp, but I think short form films and documentaries can be really impactful. And so instead of going out of New Mexico and looking for resources outside, paying for resources outside, we decided to partner with local organizations. And thank you for your generosity to create our own stories and talk about our own narratives. Part of the reason I got so tired of the critical race theory debates and the ethnic studies debates is because I felt like, let's just get grounded and make the materials. And so we featured local experts, local historians, local, our neighbors, our vecinos. And there's no way to refute historical events when people are recounting them from the vantage of having lived them. So I want to really celebrate those films and add to that growing list of films we'll be working on. You'll see the lessons presented by our teams, and then we'll debut some classroom kits to put some games in the classroom. I think that learning can be fun, even if it's topics that can be challenging. We can play, we can talk and share, and we want to create materials for teachers to have in their classroom, something tangible. Okay. I'm going to start with the films, right? Okay. So I want to introduce Daniel Aguilera next. He's my longtime collaborator in all this work, and he'll be sharing the next segment with you that introduces 4 short films as part of this repository, and to talk about what we'll be using these films for and creating a different classroom experience. So Daniel Aguilera is a visual artist, first generation college graduate in history from New Mexico State University, who went on to study film at Syracuse University with additional studies in graphic design, education, and art, including his experience as a carpenter and educator. Thank you, Daniel.
Buenas tardes. I'm here. I am proud to share these short educational films we've been working on. Having studied history, I was aware of the broader strokes of some of these stories, but to hear the more nuanced and personal details of these stories from the people who lived and in some cases continue to live these stories has created a thirst and created lost my place. Yeah, I created thirst to keep unearthing these histories behind the stories and to seek out the witnesses of New Mexico history to capture the testimonies that never make it into our textbooks. So there's gonna be just 4 segments of the short films. We're not gonna show them in their entirety. And the first film is actually a film that I co-directed, co-produced with other graduate students and other students here at the university in 2008 in Dr. Lara's class. And we'll have an opportunity to sort of discuss and take any questions at the very end of the entire presentation. So enjoy.
El trabajo es siempre correr, siempre correr. Para agarrar un bordo vas a correr. Para agarrar un bote vas a correr. Para ir a almorzar vas a correr. Pero siempre un día típico se empieza corriendo. En el trabajo del film siempre se empieza corriendo.
Casi nomás nos manteníamos parados todo el día, ¿no? De las 6 de la mañana a las 6 de la tarde. Y nos daban media hora para comer a las 6 de la tarde. Y luego entraba yo a las 7, a las 6:30 a lavar la maquinaria porque...
El fil no es ya, no, el fil ya no es garantía para el trabajador. El trabajador de fil batalla mucho, porque cuando hay trabajo, hay una semana, 2 semanas, está bien, pero después se acaba, batalla porque riegan, porque se acaba la pizca de chile, que espérate a que empiece el colorado. Son puras pasaditas que la verdad ya el trabajo del campo para nosotros ya no nos da nada. Ahora ya el dólar ya no. Ya con lo que ganamos apenas si nos mantenemos.
Si un trabajador no le da producto, o sea, no le da una ganancia, ¿sabes qué? Tú sí.
When you come to a place like this, when you get these plaques, when you have all of these historical markers that don't include us, this is part of the reason why many of our people aren't aware of our culture or heritage. This is why there are probably a significant number of Manso, Suma, Piro, and Tiwa descendants here, Inde descendants here, who don't even know about their beautiful indigenous culture and history, because in these special sites and these historical sites, there's not one mention of the indigenous population that was here, that is still here, but that was here that sacrificed to help build these cultural icons or these markers. And so this leads to, or this contributes to the erasure of Native American people. And this is actually one of the reasons why the Piro Manso Tiwa tribe has struggled with recognition, because we're not recognized in these historical spaces, and we have to force our way into these spaces. We have to reclaim our history. We have to be the ones to tell these stories, because if we leave it to the plaques and the historians of the past, then we're not mentioned. And if we didn't exist then why should you worry about the land grants that pertain to the populations that were here, whose sacrifice, whose blood, sweat and tears went into the construction of the missions.
Reconocimiento como tal que yo sepa no hay, ¿verdad? No les sabría decir, o sea, hay un monumento de Fray José de San Francisco, sabemos que en la historia dice que fueron los mansos los que estuvieron aquí, pero no hay ningún reconocimiento que yo sepa, aquí no hay.
Sí, es lo que estaba notando, y pregunté pues si fue una misión que fue específicamente hecha para convertir a nuestros antepasados, porque no hay algo que nos da un reconocimiento, pero bueno, nomás quería saber si había algo.
Sí, no, que yo sepa no hay.
Sí.
And I'm just telling you how the history was back then. When they decided to integrate the schools, and they said, okay, we have this school full of little black kids. What we're going to do is we're going to test them and see if they equal coming to be integrated. Well, I want you to know, we had one of the best principals around, and her name was Miss Jill Bundy Grimes. And she said, sure, go ahead, test my kids if you want to. And I want you to know that when the test came back, the children in that black school, they tested higher than anybody in the district. And that shows you that she was not over there playing on her job. She wanted her kids to go somewhere and, and do things in their life. Basically, we know Martin Luther King. We know Booker T. Washington. we know a couple of more people. Just that, like for instance, the school that I went to, he was Paul Lawrence Dunbar. Nobody didn't know anything about Paul Lawrence Dunbar, but he was a great black person also. And now the kids, that's the only thing about the integrated school. The kids have lost all of the history about some of the famous black people. But I have noticed that in the latter years that they try to bring up some of it, you know, on television now. And they get a little of it. But during that period of time, no, they didn't tell us anything unless you were at a, you know, predominantly black school. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that I learned from my mother about her activism. But one of the things that has really been a strong, strong value for me is a value I learned about on the picket line. And that was that, you know, if you work together for a common goal, there is nothing that you can't accomplish. And this strike was won by women, by Chicanas that are stereotyped as being, you know, only to be at home and not to be involved. These were women that said, this is our future too. And we have to fight for that future. And when it was time, they stepped right up and they said, we'll take over the strike and we will win. And they did. It was a lot of Chicanas that probably never even thought they would do that. And, you know, I can remember there were evenings where, or would that be something happening on the picket line, that there was an expectation of something bad going to happen, and so, you know, we'd get in the car and we'd put a megaphone on top of the roof of the car and we'd drive around the mining district and we'd be talking to the women. You know, we need you on the picket line. Vengan a la línea, vengan a la línea. You know, you have to come, you have to come. How they got here, I have no idea. But I mean, you could look up at the sides of the hills, like over there where I told you that the little coffee place would be. There weren't that many trees, but boy, you could see people just pouring, literally pouring over the hills, coming to take up the picket line. And so, you know, it was just an unbelievable thing to experience. And, you know, that's still alive in me. You know, that gift, the gift of solidarity, that we're worth something and that we're worth fighting for ourselves. And that's the importance of ethnic studies and of history. We need to know our history. We need to know that we were segregated. We need to know that we were discriminated against. That was overt discrimination. Today, it's more covert. So people begin to think, oh, everything is okay. It's not. It's not. And there is no reason why we should accept that. And we together can make a difference. We built this state. It was built on our backs. And we need to wake up and bring it to a richness that it deserves. So, lots of memories.
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that. Um, so next I want to introduce, right? Yeah. I want to introduce Dr. Cynthia Wise. She is a recent graduate from NMSU's doctoral program in the Teacher Preparation, Leadership, and Administration program, and a current student in the Master's in Government program. She has worked closely with Borderlands and Ethnic Studies program at NMSU for the past 3 years, and her vast connections to the agencies, organizations, and communities in New Mexico is invaluable to her work. So, welcome. Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you. You'll see them turn to me. They just call me boss. This is a pleasure for me to be here and an honor to be part of this project. The films are a labor of love for all of us. And I get the pleasure of introducing our lessons that we've been working on for the last week. Before I do that, I do want to acknowledge Provost Campbell. Thank you so much for coming. Without you, we would not be here. Thank you. So our first group that will be presenting is Carmen Bell, Ray Gutierrez, both of them from Alma de Arte, and Dr. Erica Reed. They'll be presenting on Blackdom, New Mexico.
Hello, everyone. Bienvenidos. Thank you for coming. I am Ray Gutierrez, a recent graduate from Alma de Arte High School and a future student of DACC and New Mexico University. Focusing on secondary education with a major focus on history. We are a group that is focusing on planning a curriculum for Blackdom for younger students. We are focusing on making a lesson plan that is inclusive and New Mexico oriented. We will be using background knowledge of segregation and of cases related to the notion of separation in Southern America and bringing it back to have a better understanding of Blackdom, New Mexico and the creation and dissipation of the first Black settlement. In fact, this is a picture here of some of the community members of this town in its prime. About 2 or 3 families here all together, showing off just the diversity of age and their hopeful faces of starting this new town together. And now we will show you a part of a very insightful documentary on the beginning and end of Blackdom.
A small town once lived here, in the wide open spaces of opportunity. It was a modest town on the plains of the New Mexico Territory. A few wood frame buildings held together with little more than pioneer pride. Over there stood a general store. Here, a church and a schoolhouse. Down the road were small homes with green gardens. Life here was primitive, and much was improvised. Lard and potash were used for soap. Whole buildings would topple in the strong prairie wind. But with each passing season, more people came here to settle, for this was a place where dreams were possible. It was a place of freedom.
The beginning of a very insightful documentary by PBS Colores. It is something that has fueled a lot of our work on lesson planning. And now I will hand it to Carmen to explain some of the aspects and standards of the mock-up of our lesson.
So the goals that we came up with centered around the new social studies standards, which focuses on understanding the historical context and the significance of these events and the hold that those have on their identity. And what we want students to do is analyze our sources and learn the depth behind these events and how those shape the conditions in America post-slavery, and how you can trace these events to help understand the motivations behind them and how those conditions affected African Americans. And I'm going to hand it back to Ray to explain the assignments we created to achieve this.
Perdóname, Carmen, please introduce yourself.
Right. I'm Carmen Bell. I'm an incoming student at NMSU. and I recently graduated from Alma de Arte. So I've been working with this Writing Institute for about a year. So thank you so much.
And now I'm going to bring it back to some of the tasks we have created for the mock-up of our lesson. Bringing it back to the learning goals that Carmen just talked about, helping students analyze and think critically on the rich history of New Mexico. We will use stuff like literature circles. Students can analyze readings and texts from our New Mexico archives and from online sources that have been rich with information. They can also use vocab explorers, their own little booklets to write down words that they might have questions on, or they might find interesting, or they might want to talk about more. And they can talk about these things in Socratic seminars where we can put up words, phrases, even time periods, and the students can mesh on them and have their own time to speak about it, just like in round robin discussions, but they can have a more centralized talking point. And our exit ticket, which relates back to the essential questions, which Carmen will talk about in a second. How would you be affected by similar laws? Bringing it back to what the background information gives us and pertaining it to the kids today.
Okay, so our essential questions that we came up with were designed to get students thinking about their community. So our first is it better to abandon defective governments or to improve upon them? And how do the laws and conditions impact a community's mindset? And we want the students to be considering these questions as they think about and contemplate this rich history. And so it helps them understand their sense of community and their sense of self and their own identity. And we think it's essential that we understand the role Black history plays in our state. Thank you so much.
Thank you for considering our lesson and our plans, and please contact us if you have any more questions or information that you'd like to offer up. Thank you.
We will be having a question and answer session at the end of all of the presentations and after we present the classroom kits. Our next group that will be coming up is Andres Uribe, Rey Gutierrez will be joining us again, Dr. Blanca Orajo and Dr. Jeanette Haynes-Ryder talking about Japanese internment in New Mexico.
Buenas tardes. Hello, everybody. My name is Blanca Araujo. I am a, I get more nervous. I am a professor in the College of Health Education and Social Transformation in this college here. And I teach the social studies methods courses to pre-service teachers. And I'm working with a fabulous team, and they are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andres Uribe. I am currently 17 and about to be a senior this year at Arrowhead Park Early College High School.
Oh, me. I'm still Rey Gutierrez.
I'm Jeanette Haynes-Ryder. I'm a professor in the School of TPAL, Teacher Preparation, Administration, and Leadership in the College of Hest.
Topic that we are working on is the Japanese internment camps here in New Mexico. We looked at the social studies standards that are addressing Theme 4 and history. historical thinking, and we were wanting to demonstrate historical argumentation by using various resources and perspectives to show the impact of World War II on the people of New Mexico and the impact that the state's citizens and residents populations had on the war. And in the case that we're looking at the impact on the Japanese and Japanese American population here in New Mexico. We're also looking at World War II, historical change, continuity, context, and reconciliation. And here we're wanting the students to explore the legacy of othering in the United States. And we're specifically looking at the internment camps located in the state of New Mexico. And we hope to inspire thoughts about issues of identity, citizenship, and civil liberties. And Andres will share more.
Yes, so part of our lesson is concluding our materials, concepts, and also guiding questions to help the students get along within the lesson. So some of the materials that we wanted to bring and incorporate within our own lesson includes materials that we find within our National Archive, as well as the Library of Congress. So really great resource that we actually have up here on the screen is the top right, the top one, was actually a letter that was given to Japanese Americans that listed that they had a short amount of time to pack essential items that they needed or wanted to take before they were sent off to encampments. So resources like these are going to be great for students because oftentimes students don't often see resources like this that are direct, that share the direct information that list and that were given to these individuals in that time. Other materials also include maps that we also find that would be really great resource. Here's one on the screen as well. But another great resource is also looking at it here in New Mexico. So here in New Mexico, we found that there was 4 encampments. So a part of that is also including the maps. And then another piece of that is also looking at videos and oral histories. So with that, we kind of saw some of the videos, but also what that means is that there's that other way for students to get involved and other way for students to get engaged and to also learn. Some of the concepts that we plan to also cover in this lesson include racial prejudice, racism, violence, land ownership, disposition, Asiatic Exclusion League, Executive Order 9066, and also the War Relocation Authority. Also, part of this lesson, some of the guiding questions that we developed that help us get students along within learning this content and learning this lesson include, it goes in a timeline from prior to World War II, during World War II, and after World War II, and what that life was like for Japanese American. So some of those include prior to World War II, what were some of the experiences of Japanese people here in New Mexico? What were some of those experiences in relation to World War II? And what is the historical conditions that led up to constructing Japanese Americans as the suspect, which is really clear to see in some of the evidence or some of the prime resources that we include, such as a letter. And then the last one is also the elements of oppression that still play a role in regarding people of Asian descent in the US today. And that really relates to what we just experienced and what we're still in was a COVID-19 pandemic. And with our discussion here today, it's clear how we want to tie in these lessons into the present. So that way we can also learn about the past, but also learn about how those roles play into today. And so these guiding questions create a timeline for us to see prior to World War II, during World War II, and after World War II to the modern day. And I will now pass it over to Ray.
Yes, just here to expand on some of the guiding questions that we have here and how they'll relate more to students. Questions like the first 2 focus on analyzing the emotions and the sentiments of the people at the time. Students will be able to have a deeper understanding of the Asian people confined in New Mexico at the time. The last 2 questions are more focused on spreading of false rhetoric and stereotypes. We are striving to dismantle and analyze the negative language and acts committed against Asian Americans of today and the past. And I hope the students in the future and all of you today can think critically on the actions of the government and yourself to really affect the change in the world. Thank you.
I don't know about you all, but when I was in high school, I could never have done that. I'm just, another hand for this. Our next lesson plan, we're going to call Carmen Bell back up and Dr. Dulcinea Lara to talk about the 1917 bath riot.
Hi again. My name is Carmen Bell. I've been working at the Learning Action Buffet for, well, since I was 16, and sorry. So, so the bath riots stood out to me personally as a young Hispanic woman, and the story starts in 1917, while during workers would be crossing the borders, and they were often like doused with dangerous pesticides and chemicals, and it was an extremely dehumanizing practice. And many of the women, they had their pictures taken, and it was every 8 days that they were regularly being doused in these chemicals. And one day, Carmelita Torres, who was a 17-year-old girl, just refused to partake in it. And she convinced other women to do the same. And in a few days, that spread to a crowd of thousands of people. And I think that other students, especially women, should see the impact behind her asserting her own autonomy. And so the essential questions that we picked, which are helping students grasp at these abstract concepts and help them explore the complexity behind this event. And they focus on our 5 strands, because the event overlaps with all 5 of our topics. So I'm excited to share those with you. So the objective would help students understand the historical context leading up to this point, the Mexican Revolution and America about to jump in on World War I, and the economic impact, because this woman shut down our border crossing for 2 days. And student civic responsibility, because her actions transformed policies on immigration and labor, and geographically and ethnically, and her identity and the significance of that, and how the stereotypes rooted in these events trickled down today, and how her identity left her vulnerable in this situation. And we're going to execute that through literature analysis and art analysis. So here we have a picture of a skateboard art, which sort of honors Carmelita and portrays her as this hero, and this article written at the time, which, as you can see, there's a lot of offensive language, and it sort of demonizes her. And I want students to be able to analyze the rhetoric and understand how that impacts her narrative, and draw their own understanding. And I hope that they can find that action empowering. And I think that this is important because of how moments like these will echo through history. And like the chemicals, Zyklon B was used throughout World War II and in prisons, and how that just continued to dehumanize people in those same ways, and how the eugenics and how those stereotypes still hinder immigration policies through the pandemic, and just the economic and physical exploitation of all of these people. And I think that students will really resonate with that story. And I think that once they identify those patterns, I think that they will also come to understand the power of like asserting your own autonomy in a situation where you have to. Thank you.
Before you go, can we have a major round of applause cheering for our young students, please? I was lucky to be in partnership with Carmen, and she gave me homework and we had meetings, and she's just really on it and incredible, and she's going to be a fantastic teacher. I just want to reiterate that I was born and raised here in this area, and these histories were not part of my curriculum. So the fact that these young people are not only learning these things, but writing the lessons is just incredibly powerful for me. So thank you, Carmen.
Like Dr. Lara, I'm a product of Southern New Mexico schools. I didn't get, yeah, go Panthers. But we didn't get these lessons. And it's so enriching to see young people putting these lessons together for future generations so that students like Dr. Lara and I and others who went to Gadsden and those who go to schools here in Las Cruces, Hatch, Deming, Silver City can learn these lessons going forward and teach their children and their children's children and their children's children. Our next lesson is going to be about the Bracero program and the colonias of New Mexico with Andres Uribe, Ramon Padilla, and Dr. Brenda Rubio.
Okay, so we're going to introduce ourselves first, but while Dr. Rubio is coming up, I just want to say that these students are also part of the Learning Action Buffet. And that's very important because they produce all kinds of media for consumption in our community. So you should check those out. And that's why they can do this stuff, because we asked them to, right? I'm going to give a shameless plug for our school, Alma de Arte. I teach there. We asked them to do a panel presentation at the end of every year on an essential question. And then in their senior year, they have to sit in front of teachers and tell us like what they learned about their apprenticeship, and because they have to do that as well before they graduate. But then they have to sum up their experience at our school. So it's not a surprise that students can do this. It's because we asked them, hey, you can do this, and say you can do this, that they do it. So it's really important that we look at students as leaders today, not as leaders of tomorrow. I cringe when I hear people say, oh, you're the future. No, they're the now. And that's what we need to remember. So our group is doing the Braceros y Colonias unit or lesson. And I'm gonna allow for others to, our group to introduce themselves. I said I'm a teacher at Alma de Arte. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenda Rubio. I'm an assistant professor in ed leadership at the University of North Texas, but originally from this area, rooted here in Paso del Norte and a product of Gadsden schools as well.
And hi, everyone. I was up here for the other presentation. But I just want to really quickly say, to what Mr. Padilla was saying, we really got connected with this program really through the Lab Learning Action Buffet, which is a great organization that I actually joined back in 2017. And now it's just been a really great process because with it, I've been able to connect here and also been able to get all these wonderful resources and also been able to be here with the lesson development.
Thank you. So these pictures were chosen to kind of give us a feel for what braceros were going through. If you look at the very first picture to the far left, you see braceros on a train getting ready to get to one of the stations closer to the border. It's happy, right? You can see that the men are smiling, the women are bidding them farewell, even though it's sad, you can see smiles on their faces. But that changes pretty quickly by the time they get to El Paso or any of the other stations that they are sent to. You can see the use of DDT on the soon-to-be braceros. If you focus in, you can see that the person administering the DDT actually has a mask on while he's spraying it directly onto people who have no protection whatsoever. That's pretty shocking. Once they get into the fields, they didn't just do field work either. They worked on railroads, they worked in all different kinds of industries. But the fields in southern New Mexico is kind of what we're kind of focusing on. And you can see they're using the cortijo, or the short-handled hoe. That has now been outlawed. You can no longer use that because it creates serious problems for your back if you do that. And it was really only used to save money. Instead of making a full-sized hoe, you use this little thing that made you bend over, and they outlawed those. I also have some one of our friends who's been with us through the Equity Forum brought some tools for us to look at. So I don't want to forget those things that he brought. Like I said, they didn't just work in the fields; they also worked in construction, on the railways. All of those things were part of what they did. And then finally, we have a picture of a colonia. And a lot of people might say, well, braceros and colonias, what do those have to do with each other? They have everything to do with each other. And so I actually worked in this colonia. It's Las Palmeras, which is just north of Anthony, New Mexico. And a lot of those folks, while they weren't braceros, many of the colonias that are around our area, there are 37 in Doñana County, worked in Stallman or in some other kind of farm as a bracero. So there's actually a direct connection to those, to these two different seemingly independent phenomena. So I'm going to turn it over to Andres.
So in this lesson, we want to cover some of the standards. So some of the standards that we want to cover is, if you look on it, to the left is theme 4, which covers World War I, World War II, and the time between the wars. And what that also looks like is interpreting data and evidence to conduct periodization of key and contributions by key people to the events that occurred during the 20th century. The other theme that we plan on covering within this lesson is also World War II. And more specifically, evaluating how the events during World War II impacted people from diverse groups. So within this lesson, some of the materials that we want to really put a strong emphasis on and really provide to students is a great resource that we actually found online was the Bracero History Archive. So within this archive, they have a list of Bracero program members. It lays out all their names, and then it also lays out their relatives. And what this does is it also provides oral histories. So it provides a short oral history that the person has given. Some of them range from 20 minutes to some of them lasting more than an hour. So these are great resources for students to hear the voices of those who were impacted by it. And additionally, on top of that, recently we had the privilege of going to the NMSU archives. And part of that was also discovering more about the Bracero program. What we also found was more documentation that related back to it, and some of them was even tracking statements about labor. Other great resources, one of them that we actually showed a clip of was Fruits of Labor from 2008. That videos, all I can say is that videos are such a great format because on top of oral histories, you also have a visual to it that also adds another layer of being for students to be intimate with lessons, to learn more and to really connect and resonate with it. And I can just say as a student, it's great to, whenever I have those opportunities, to get close and feel like I'm really having a connection to it. Other resources also include another video, which is Harvest of Loneliness. And also other information includes the Catholic Diocese of Las Cruces survey of Colonia residents.
And then some key concepts or vocabulary, World War II, labor shortages, guest worker programs, pathways to citizenship, immigration law, housing, and subdivision law. Those are all really important aspects to teach prior to the lesson.
So among our guiding questions, as some of the speakers have said before, it's really important for us to be able to make connections between the historical and the present, right? How the legacy of this history is still very much present in our policies, our practices, and some of the injustices that our communities are living every day. So I'll just read the last one. What is the connection between the Bracero program and the creation of colonias in the United States?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much more pleasant than the hook, huh? You've heard a lot said tonight about the Learning Action Buffet, but I want to take a moment to recognize their director, Michelle Valverde, also a product of NMSU. Their work is a testament to her work and the progress that she's made with kids. Our next lesson is one that I've heard a lot of in the past 3 years. The Cordova sisters of Bonn, New Mexico. Our presenters are Cabustillos, Delia Torres, Dr. Susana Ibarra Johnson, and Dr. Dulcinea Lara.
Hello, everyone. I am Katrina Bustillos, and I teach in the Silver City area. And this is Delia Torres.
Buenas noches. My name is Delia Torres. I teach at Centennial High School, New Mexico history.
Buenas noches. Good evening. Susana Ibarra Johnson, and I am in the College of Health Education, Social Transformation. And I am an assistant professor in bilingual education in TESOL, teaching English for speakers of other language.
Hi, Dulcinea Lara, and this story is so important. I love, this is how I got into my work. These two women are heroes.
Okay, so we titled our what could eventually be a unit plan, Taboo Teaching. What does it mean to be educated? ¿Qué significa ser educado? Because teaching ideas that seem controversial is something that teachers don't really think about when they're in their classroom, because their classroom is a safe space for them. And these two sisters from Vaughan, New Mexico, were questioned about the curriculum that they were using in their classroom. And the ideas of cultural history and social justice were not as accepted in the late 1990s, 96, 97, when all of this happened, but are now a little more acceptable as part of a curriculum. But again, that wasn't the case in the 1990s. The sisters were not intending to be divisive in their quest to impart knowledge, but that's not what the Vaughan School Board decided. Sometimes we know that school board members may not understand what it is that we're doing in our classroom, but if we are able to have that conversation, that can help. Patsy and Nadine Cordova were not given that opportunity. They were accused of being racist and teaching anti-American history from the Chicano point of view. They were also accused of stereotyping Anglos in their role in history as colonizers and oppressors. And again, the Vaughan School Board was not appreciative of that and asked them to stop doing that. Eventually, they were suspended and fired for insubordination for teaching the history that the board felt was taboo. We often see teachers and educators facing opposition for ideas that seem taboo, but if we don't approach even the surface of these topics, how can we learn and help our students understand that struggles in education are real, that it's not often as equal as it seems, and that we need to help move education forward in every way?
I had the privilege and the honor to look through some documents that belong to these teachers. And just reading looking at the artwork that students created and reading some of the tests and vocabulary that they were given, I reflected on the essential question: what does it mean to be educated? ¿Qué significa ser educado? And this is what I saw or what I observed in their work, that to be educated is to have options, to have choices in life, that these choices and options are not predetermined for our students, that we open up the world to them so that when they leave our classrooms and public schools, that they have the option to choose for themselves. This, to be educated, also means to have the opportunity to learn about and from our histories, all histories, to know and understand history in ways that impacts us today and our well-being. And we know that these are trying times and we've all been impacted or affected in many, many ways. Learning about ethnic studies and being part of this project, and I see this in students' work, is about liberation. Liberation from racism and oppression and exploitation. It's important for our students to know the difference between self-determination and autonomy versus assimilation. We want our students to know who they are, where they come from, where they fit in. And we want them to have a voice in our classrooms and have the words to communicate their most authentic self. We want them to be authentic in the classroom. I also want our students to understand is that we have to learn from our place where we come from. And we have to think about our own experiences and bring those experiences into the classroom. Oftentimes, and I'm very guilty of this deficit thinking. They don't know much. I'm going to teach them. But learning is reciprocated. I'm the teacher and the student, and they're my teacher and the student. Classrooms need to be about rehumanization, making sure that all students are seen and valued. Nadine and Patsy Cordova's classroom was about knowledge creation beyond just the teacher's knowledge. Students created their knowledge. And this story for me, and I'm sure for many of their students, created a culture of lifelong learning for their students. I'm extremely proud and honored to be a part of this project.
Okay, so one thing that I wanted to mention, I had the honor of meeting Patsy and Nadine in Albuquerque Public Schools. I was a bilingual education specialist. And when I went into their classroom, this was about 19 years ago. And they taught in Washington Middle School, as we very affectionately call La Washa. La Washa, you know. And when I went into their classroom, they were vibrantly speaking bilingually in English and Spanish. And now a lot of my work is with translanguaging, and that's what they were doing. And a lot of our ethnic studies is what they draw from their linguistic repertoire. So I just wanted to share that they're just pioneers. They're like trailblazers in many respects with ethnic studies and with language development and so forth. And very happy to be a part of this project with the teachers. Thank you.
And all of these have hyperlinks and things. So if you would like to know more information, we can send you what we put together so that you can find out some more information on your own.
While our next group gets ready to come down to talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women, Spencer Cojo, Kayla Myers, Anita Lara, Kayla Martinez, and Dr. Georgina Bedoni. I want to thank Associate Dean Post for the space from the College of Health, Education, and Social Transformation. It's work like this that is that social transformation link that now is present at NMSU.
Check, check, check. Sorry. I'm Georgina Bedoni. Not Otanet Hachini Nishle, Kinchini Bashichin, Bimpitone Dashiche, Kenyane Dashanala, Okut Ego, Stanan Nishle. I just introduced myself in my first language. And I am Georgina Bedoni. I am an assistant professor in Native American Studies in the Department of BEST. So much to celebrate tonight. And I will let my partner introduce himself.
Nitakote, she's Spencer Cojo, Huntie. My name is, hello, how are you? My name is Spencer Cojo. I am Mescalero Apache and half Laguna Pueblo. And I am a current student at Eastern New Mexico University of Portales, and I'm going for my early child education.
We decided to do the topic of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirits, but for this presentation only, we're going to talk about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. This is an epidemic, a large topic to cover. So I am just sharing with you just a part of the lesson, just the introductory part. But this lesson is a unit plan that we have developed into multiple activities, but also digging a little bit deeper. So this first glance at this lesson plan is kind of looking at missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls statistics in a national way. And with this, we were looking at the data created by the Urban Indian Health Institute, created by Abigail Echohawk, and along with CDC data as well. And these are the social studies standards that we are looking at. We're digging really deep into the inquiry part of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I wanted to share with you oh no, that's not going to work. Okay, so this is a student, a past student of mine. Her name is Rosalie Fish. She is enrolled member of the Cowlitz and Muckleshoot tribe in the Pacific Northwest, and she really drew attention to the awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. MMIW is the abbreviation for it. She drew attention because she's a runner, and one of her mini track meets, she had the well-known red handprint across her face. And this has become a symbolism for MMIW. It has multiple meanings. So it could be in solidarity. It's also known to draw attention to the issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women, MMIW. And some of it have used it to also symbolize the silencing of the epidemic itself. And this is the student, but this is the link for the TED Talk, the youth TED Talk, where she talks about not only the statistics, but her reasoning for doing that. And it's very short. It's something that our teachers can incorporate into their classroom. It's a 12-minute video, but it also really highlights the capabilities of our youth. And we have some of our youth here with us that have been with us, who are thinking critically about the subject, just so many issues that we can dig deeper. And I think when we think about MMIW, we think, oh, I don't know if our students are prepared to that. Well, they are, because it's an epidemic. And one of the reasons why we have selected this topic is because it also directly impacts us, in particular here in New Mexico. If you'll look at some of our essential questions here, again, this lesson is digging deeper into inquiry. So these are some of our essential questions that we came up with. And it's close to us because it also impacts our borderlands. It's not just MMIW. When we are in the southern area of the state, we have femicides. It's very similar. And when you look at the statistics, which we want our students to investigate and look at the data collection between MMIW and femicides, we want them to compare and contrast the similarities of the violence against women of color. And one of the other reasons why this is such a significant topic for us is I will have my partner share his story.
Thank you, Joe. I myself is Mescalero Apache, and there was, one case of missing and murdered Indigenous woman, and she was murdered in 2020, and her name was Lataza Naichi Managi, and she was missing for 1 month and a day. And before she was found by her younger brother, who was stormed to the last residency where she was at, the investigation showed that she was pushed down a flight of stairs and, broke her neck. And they were not able to have a funeral for her because of the decomposition of the body. And she left behind a son and her family. Her murderer was sentenced to only 2 years behind bars, as travel laws are different than the outside because of our sovereign nation. Her family is considered her to have never gotten justice. William Hostosovit is out living his life and has a new family where they never get Lataza back, for her memory will not be forgotten. She is now a voice for our community and aware, and it's aware for the young ladies and also the women in our community. And because of this new epidemic, we teach our kids to be aware of their, surroundings, and I'm honored to bring awareness to you all, to everybody, that her life, and I pray for her life and for her family to heal. Yeah.
And now I want to present our final lesson of the evening, though by far it's not the only one we're working on. We'll show you a list of all of our lessons that we're working on now and in the years ahead. The final lesson, Fashion as Resistance and Reclaiming Cultural Identity, with Anita Lara, Kayla Martinez, Valerie Sanchez, and Dr. Michelle Valverde.
I took the mic. So our topic is fashion as resistance and reclaiming cultural identity. What you just experienced is a form of fashion as expression. My name is Kayla Martinez. I am a mujer mestiza, artista. I am a maestra de arte at our school, Raíces del Saber. I have some founders in the audience. I am also from northern New Mexico, in the areas of El Rito, Mesa Vista, Poaque, Rio Chama.
Good evening, Michelle Valverde with the Lab Learning Action Buffet, and actually a Wildcat. Deming, yeah, Deming. Anybody else from Deming? No? Oh, man, okay, thank you. You're next.
My name is Valerie Sanchez. I lived in the Valley my whole life, obviously. I currently teach AP World History, and I'm going to be teaching U.S. History. I previously taught New Mexico History at Santa Teresa High School. I'm coming off of having I have to go back and count, about maybe 15 years of teaching elementary school. So this is my 20th year teaching, and it's thank you. It's gone by fast. I'm like, really? That long? I have to sit there and count. But I love it. It's always something I've always wanted to do. Yeah, I teach, like I said, I've always wanted to be a history teacher, and this is one of my passions. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Anita Lara. I am a Sifal indígena, natural to these lands that you occupy currently, from Tortugas Pueblo. I'm a madrecita, daughter, a creative. I'm a maestra of movement and culture, also at Raíces del Saber Chinachli Community School.
We just wanted to take a moment to talk about the type of fashion that we're wearing. This dress is a dress that I made in passing of traditions from my grandmother to my mother to me. And it was for a movement that it was kind of perfect, the segue. Two groups that came together was the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two Spirit, and Ni Uno Mas, which is the pink cross.
I'm currently wearing a throwback T-shirt, a more contemporary way of stating your presence in the room. It reflects the Chicano Student Union of Gadsden High School. And then you see the Chester Cheeto with his hand up in the air. And in the bottom, it suggests amor, education, and justice for all.
And of course, I'm wearing, the traje from Mexican American culture, Mexico too. I did get this in Juarez years ago, and I wear it every single year from the mercado. So if you've ever been to the mercado in Juarez, you know, you gotta run fast. But yeah, I wear this every single year for Cinco de Mayo, which is not an official American holiday, but we tend to kind of celebrate, the battle that eventually won the war for. And then I also wear for 16 de septiembre. And a current thing that I added to the cultural identity and celebration of, the Mexican culture and the Hispanic culture is this crown. And I did get it in Puerto Palomas near Deming, New Mexico. So hey, yeah, at the Pink House. Yeah, and I'm also a product of Gadsden High School, so go Panthers. So don't hate me because I teach now at Santa Teresa, so it's like, ooh, you gotta support the Valley.
I'm not wearing too much of a fashion statement, but I collect bangles and hoop earrings, and these go way back. I found out by being with this group. Thank you all.
Thank you. Some of our essential questions is, what do you know about fashion as a form of expression and a form of resistance?
Impacts of fashion through expression and resistance. Positive identity formation, such as celebration and reclamation of oral history, voices, and narratives. Visual storytelling through vestido, traje, or regalia. And also intergenerational connections, such as the collection of natural skill sets like sewing, ironing creases, weaving, and beading.
Social movements are also impacted by fashion, such as the Pachuco movement, challenging gender norms, MMIWG2S, and sometimes literal t-shirt messages that support movements like BLM and or for against that.
One thing that is part of cultural identity too is the passing of traditions. And one of those traditions that was taught to my mother and to my aunt that passed away a few years ago from ovarian cancer, and also to myself and my sisters, was the art of crocheting. And that I never learned to knit. That's completely different. My grandmother knew how to do that. But my grandmother was the one that taught us how to crochet, to do something very basic. And from then on, it was up to us kind of like to do new patterns or what have you. So at the table at the very entrance, you'll see several examples of crocheting that I've done, because I tend to make blankets and hats. And it's just continuing on that tradition that was passed on from us. So it's something that you guys can choose something on your way out. So it's a gift to you. And I do have 2 blankets out there and several hats of different sizes to share my culture and that with you.
Thank you, Valerie. Another expression or impact through fashion as resistance is the topic of appropriation versus appreciation, such as the upholding of stereotypes through media and film, also the exploitation and use of ancestral patterns, sometimes as you see in high fashion couture, and also upholding the false narratives that arise in high fashion as well.
Another topic is environmental sustainability, such as generational pieces getting passed down from one generation to the next, shopping local versus global, and consumerism, how you spend your money.
Has anybody visited their local cholerio store? Los Amigos on Valley Drive. You'll find all your needs there.
We know you all been there.
Another is also the generational uses of clothing, such as wedding dresses, quince dresses, and also ceremonial traje.
Oh, so we found an exploration of this topic and anything really related to culture or social movements, it requires an open-minded approach
Such as not having all the answers.
and collaborating with students. Sometimes they have more knowledge than we do.
Student-led exploration.
Research.
Upholding experiences and stories of people within the culture and social movements.
And give students the vocabulary to build dialogue and continue conversations. One thing we also wanted to add on there is that as a form of expression, it can be any position of the spectrum from one extreme side to the other. So we have our sample vocabulary and some of the social standards that we found connected to this topic.
Some of the standards that that are connected across this lesson would be, of course, to high school civics, other standards, and this is all in line with the new standards that were recently passed and are going to be implemented. U.S. high school civics, New Mexico history, U.S. history, world history, and of course, our cultural connections too with the standards on that for equity. Sorry, thank you.
Dream team.
So it gives me another opportunity to say, go Panthers. We'll have pity on you, Michelle. I want to call down Dr. Susana Ibarra Johnson to talk about some of the other lessons that we're going to be working on in the weeks, months, and years ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. So some of the, I think I'm going to stand over there so I can see a little better, if that's okay. So yes, I'm very excited to be part of this. I think culturally and linguistically, and just tying it to our education here in New Mexico with Martinez Yazzie, just to bring that up because I think it's very important for our students, what you just seen today, we just heard from all the students, teachers, and facilitators. But these are topics that we'll continue to look at, additional lessons, I should say, and different topics that a week ago when we met, it was just great to be together, generating ideas and even more topics. And so I won't read them to you, you could see them there. But one of the things that I do want to mention is that, again, bringing back the Martinez Yazzie, because I think it's culturally and linguistically diverse students that we have in New Mexico. And I think that's very important because culturally, throughout southern New Mexico and northern New Mexico, all around New Mexico. It's important that we bring those untold stories. I was actually in Albuquerque this weekend, and I was sharing with a teacher from Atrisco Heritage, and she's like, wow, I want to be a part of that. Can we build some, looking also at northern New Mexico? So already she was a social studies teacher. So I was mentioning to her some of the topics, and I think we have so many untold stories in New Mexico that we need to continue, as you can see here in the list. But linguistically, I think that's also important because the cultural wealth of language that we have linguistically is so diverse in New Mexico. And we have also statute that looks at bilingualism, multilingualism. So we need to continue to infuse that and weave it in all our lessons. Just like the Cordova sisters, as I mentioned, I think they're the vibrant bilingualism that they used, and a lot of the work that I focus on with translanguaging, that's so important, and we continue to infuse it in all the lessons. And so I just wanted to share with you those additional lessons that we will continue to develop together in Comunidad. Thank you.
I know everyone's getting sleepy, so you're gonna help me with that? Okay. This is our classroom kit, and this box was made by hand by Daniel Aguilera, and it's really beautiful. I come from a house of game players and board game nights and fun and just creativity. And Daniel and I have co-created a museum exhibit called Pasos Ajenos that is currently in Bernalillo at the Community Museum, and something that we've heard from teachers who have come on field trips to see the exhibit is, I wish I had this in my classroom. So I said, hey, what if we make a small classroom kit version of Pasos Ajenos? And so this comes from our museum exhibit, but also from all the conversations we've been having with teachers and legislators and community organizations and students. We don't need to leave our state to get culturally relevant, linguistically relevant materials. This is a modality, it's tangible and fun. I think hopefully you can glean from the topics we've just heard about. There is a lot of kind of heaviness. It can be hard to hear these topics, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of victory and there's a lot of playfulness and fun and aspiration. And so we're really excited to present this prototype. It's called Think Inside the Box for now, because I don't think the box is itself the problem. It's what's inside the box. So we have a lot of fun with our ideas. And so we're going to be providing one of these boxes for all of our educators who are in the cohort. And you can see the design on the cover. It has a box and it talks about these being educational games to foster and inspire critical thinking, conversations, and understanding. One of the games that I present in a lot of professional developments in the school districts is the penny and the marble. It's a very simple thing that we can all do, but I find that my students talk about there's two sides to every coin. And in my classes and in many of our classes, we talk about the sphere instead of the coin, right? There's as many perspectives in this room as there are people. And so I often give a penny and a marble to my students and say, put it in your pocket. That way, whenever there's a debate or tension, you can feel in your pocket for the marble, right? The many ways of thinking, the infinite ways of thinking. And so this game comes with sets for the students in the classroom. This is one of our museum installations. It's about seeing yourself and your social significance in society. And so you can't really tell clearly, but there's 3 panels on the wall, and one is a full normal mirror. The one in the middle is a mirror with that gold crackle from like the 1980s. I was so excited to find a large pane of this at the art glass store here in Las Cruces. And then the other one is just a glass pane. And so the signage on these mirrors kind of points to visibility and value in society social significance based on categories of race, class, gender, sexual orientation, home ownership, ability, disability, income, etc. And so we've made smaller versions of these that people can put in their classrooms. Daniel has engineered these in a good way to hang on the walls, and there's curriculum that comes with each one of these games so that teachers can teach the lesson, show the films, but also have these on the walls and play around with them. This is a card game called Good, Bad, Complicated. In 2017, it was called Good, Bad, Neutral, and I think we've passed the stage of neutrality. So you can see, I think this is an NMSU professor when we had the show here in Las Cruces, and yeah, Russ, okay. And maybe his child, I'm guessing, Alma. Okay, Russ and Alma, now I know. We had an opening at the Brannigan Cultural Center in 2017, and we had over 500 people come out. And this is a game that I've played with my parents, with my child, with my friends. And there's cards that are sort of universal and also local. So we tailor our show to wherever the exhibit goes. Yeah, and it's going to be opening at the UTEP Centennial Museum next month. Yeah, so go check it out. Oh. So for the classroom, Daniel has beautifully created blank cards. So as part of the curriculum, teachers can ask students to research their own images and talk about what is locally important. The Choleria store on Valley would be like good, that would be good. So have students kind of create their own images. And what's that? It's all bad. Oh, it's not even complicated, it's all bad. So you can show that. So students would put this on their desk and kind of play with each other against it. And the point is to talk about values and to talk about what could be difficult conversations. People are going to have different cards in different piles. There's flags, there's representations of recycling, or I can't think of all of them right now. Red Chile, green Chile, some fun ones, but also some tough ones to get people talking and playing at the same time. This is one of our larger installations called Border Book. And this is really many panels. I think there's 12 panels in a row. And it's modeled after Facebook, but in the sense of using these discrete moments in history that shaped the Borderlands region. And I'm really grateful that I met Diego Medina, who's teaching me a lot about what indigeneity has meant here in this region. The same thing with Anita and other people kind of teaching about indigeneity, the charter school that was mentioned, Raíces del Saber. I didn't grow up knowing about indigeneity at all. And so this is a poster that teachers can just put up on their wall and students can read it. And so kind of looking at languaging and history. And you can see in the installation, you can like or dislike the entries. So there's what would be considered good, bad, complicated entries. And so people can vote on them. But this is a poster to kind of help history teachers think in nuanced ways about the Borderlands. This is a game called La Loterio. These are cards that are in process being developed by an incredible art collective, and it's about environmental justice. It's about the river, modeled after the popular game Loteria. And so we have featured these cards in our exhibit, and they have created 10 original artworks that will eventually become a deck of 40 to talk about environmental justice, our responsibility as humans in relationship with water and plants and animals. And the captions are written by Selena Corral. She's a local artist, youth organizer, and just hilarious, and a musician. So the phrases that she uses really make youth laugh. They're not stuffy, they're current. And so we want to incorporate local artists into our work as well. Yeah. And then there's language. I think we've talked about ideas a lot. And so there's a poster that talks about anthropocentrism. Why do we center humans first? internal colonization, lateral violence, counter narrative, the common good, equity. So some of these words that get tripped up in political discourse, but how do we have a card that we can have in our wallet, our pocket, and pull it out? It's English one side and Spanish on the other side. And so we have those in the kit as well. So the box includes all these games, the penny and marble, the mirrors, the card game, the poster, and a give and take box. This is a box you can just have in your classroom. And the idea is that you put things in there, you take them out, and it's to teach about sharing. It's to teach about the collective. It's to teach about abundance and scarcity. And sometimes our resource is needing to be refilled. I use this in my classroom and in my professional development workshops. And people will put in a little poem and take an orange, or put in a pen and take a book or a headband. And it kind of builds this kind of relationship of sharing and kind of knowing when you need to replenish and when you need to step back and when you need to not judge someone for taking 3 things. They may have needed 3 things, and sometimes you have something to add and sometimes you need more. So there's a lot of political economic lessons that can be tied into the give and take box. And with the box, we want to develop new ideas and give these to teachers so we can think about how to keep adding things to this box. So I want to give this to Victoria, and thank you so much for believing in this wacky idea that I think is turning out pretty great. Thank you for making it, Daniel.
I'm now going to call up my lovely assistants. Oh, assistant. Again, this is Ray Gutierrez. This is question and answer time. If you have any questions, we will find people who hopefully know the answer. It won't be me. So Carmen, if you could take this one and turn them on. And if anybody has a question, raise your hand. They'll bring a microphone up. Can you hustle up there? No. If you push the button and hold it, there you go. I was going to say, let's use our teacher voices.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, cool. Hi, my name is Jess Zubia. Dr. Lada is my former professor and mentor. And so I just wanted to say thank you for being here, or for inviting us. And I wanted to know where we can get those boxes. Like, I genuinely, my brother works for FYI Plus, and he works with the youth in southern New Mexico. And I think that would be a great way to help students or kids that he works with to talk about those hard things that nobody wants to talk about. So yeah, you've got at least one person that wants that box.
Does anybody else have any questions? I'm sorry, back there. Thank you. The microphone wasn't on.
Is that they are prototype. Teachers are going to use them. They're going to get boxes. All the teachers that were here for this writing seminar will get boxes to prototype or pilot in the fall. And yeah, get in touch with Dr. Lara, and I'll make sure I make 21 boxes.
So
over there.
My name is Frank Lopez. I just moved back to Las Cruces from Albuquerque and have had many conversations with Dulcinea. And I've got to say, Dr. Lara, I was here about 3 years ago when in the conversation about Martinez Yazzie. And what you and your team and the group have done is just amazing. Like I think yeah, truly amazing. I've worked with business leaders, community leaders, a lot of nonprofit folks, and if we want a strong New Mexico and a strong workforce, it really does begin with education, but not just any education. What we need is the full history and the full education, and that's what you all are talking about. And I love that you started the session today with the two Native American folks and the elder Roybal, because our history starts way thousands of years ago, and it's not just a recent thing. So I love the diversity of the programs and the lessons. It's truly, truly powerful stuff that will elevate our people and our state to another level. So thank you for this work. The question I have is the ethnic studies program going to have an undergraduate degree and a master's degree? That's my question.
Yes.
Oh, I wasn't sure if there was any additional information to that. If there is, yeah, please continue. Otherwise,
Go ahead.
okay, yeah. Well, muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches a todos. Me llamo Gregorio González. I'm Dr. Gregorio González. I'm Genízaro en Comanche, here from New Mexico. In fact, I'm one of Dr. Lara's former students, as well as Dr. Herrera's. I'm actually coming back from Ohio State University, teaching as an indigenous postdoctoral scholar. So it's a beautiful time to be back here in New Mexico and being able to see this. I mean, during my undergraduate education here, this place really pushed my sorts of thinking in terms of how we understand not just race, but also the politics and conditions of indigeneity, and particularly the ways within which that impacts tribal nations in very distinct ways. So I think one of the questions that I have here is, as we're kind of thinking of this along the lines of culture and linguistic practice, what are ways that I guess the box that we're talking about here, or perhaps the lessons itself, can be more, I guess, mindful of, and I'm kind of thinking back to a statement that was given by a former Pueblo governor at a water conference, which he said, which was, when you know one tribe, you know one tribe. And I think that's an incredibly important thing for us to keep in mind, is that we cannot equate tribal nations in that specific way. And when we do that, it undermines tribal sovereignty and self-determination in very important ways. So, and especially I think along this area and in this space, I think there's a lot of, I think things that I would like to see happen. And hopefully, I think in my current position as a visiting professor here in the Department of Anthropology, we can kind of continue that. But I'm wondering whether there is a way to think critically about the ways within which indigenous peoples either create knowledge, or they, in some cases, they refuse knowledge. And I think that's an important kind of counterpoint to, I think, the narrative of kind of wanting to create sort of a catch-all phrase for it. And I think this program does a really good job of doing a nuanced approach to it. However, like I said, I think tribal nations have very specific sorts of issues that they're grappling with. And I wonder how educators can work more, I think, productively and perhaps creatively with indigenous educators and parents and teachers, both on the reservation and off of the reservation, because we have to remember that 3 out of every 4 Native peoples live in urban centers and not in reservations. So Indian country is here. It is palpable, and I'm really thankful for this opportunity to be able to be here and to see just a vibrant conversation happening back here. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. I wanted to go back and expound on Mr. Lopez's question. One of the things that we're working on with the Ethnic Studies program, Borderlands and Ethnic Studies Department, is undergraduate minors in ethnic studies, in Native American studies, which will address some of what you just spoke of, Dr. Gonzalez, Chicano studies. We're working on a variety of programs that will address and look at things more holistically for our students. Because as you all know, being from here and me as a product of New Mexico State, my BA and my PhD, it wasn't a lot of options, and there will be beginning in fall of 23 is what we're looking at.
I'm Lucia Carmona. I just want to really thank you. I'm really grateful to all this community that I'm part. And I just want to share that because ethnic studies starts at kindergarten, we're taking that challenge, and Raíces del Saber Chinastri Community School, a little school that started here. We're now starting our 4th year of operation. Every of you are welcome there to experience in the classroom how the kindergarten start to learn their self-identity, be proud of who they are, and share whatever. So Mr. Daniel is one of our parents there. Thank you all.
Thank you, Senora. Any other questions? I'm supposed to point out one of the stars of our films, Elisa Sanchez. Senora. I have learned so much from you, and I thank you for your femtorship. Thank you very much. There's another question in the back. I was going to say Jamie.
I'd actually love to help answer that a little bit. As a former student in high school myself, and being in the public school system for a long time, and even being in a charter for a while, I have a little bit of information on at least like the students that I know now. And going into teaching myself, I think that I could be a little bit of a help, especially being on this project now, of giving the background of the questions, the concerns, the pushback, like you said, that the students might have. And though I am only one person, I know that there's Carmen and Andres and the rest of our peers that that we might want to bring in later, that are willing to give their perspective and willing to bring the change into the school system.
Additionally, we're working with superintendents from nearly every school district in the area. We've had meetings with several of them, and they've all offered up support for the project and for the lessons that are being taught. It's an uphill battle in some districts, but we're all pretty good climbers. And we've been fighting a long time.
We need legislators, we need diversity leadership. I want you to know that Provost Campbell really pushed that final push for the Department of Ethnic Studies, and she was only here like 2 months in. So I think go to the school board meetings. I think write the letters to the Sun News or the Deming papers or the Gadsden, El Paso, Hatch. We have a teacher who teaches in Carlsbad. She couldn't make it because she has a baby, but she needs help. She needs NMSU clout and letterhead. And I'm looking at deans, I'm looking at elected officials, I'm looking at parents, I'm looking at funders and professors and students. these voices need to be amplified so that the path is made. The New Mexico Public Education Department is being vocal about being supportive, but you're right. And I think the message is like, there's 80 people in this room right now. And imagine if every school district hears from 80 of us saying this is good. I've also been labeled as a radical, and I have consistently rejected that. I talk about this as reasonable, as overdue, as exciting, as beautiful. You all have seen the quality of this work. I always insist on aesthetics. Speaking to fashion as resistance, that it looks good. I don't know how many versions of that box Daniel has made. Like, I think the final one was taped up like an hour ago, because I want it to, I want people to feel proud. I want these lessons to be full of standards, full of vocabulary, the elements, the templates. I want this to be foolproof. And so, yes, there's going to be pushback, and there has, but I feel like most people are kind of in the middle, waiting for that information or that conversation. So thank you for that comment. I think all of us have a say in how that is supported, and the teachers, some of them are in school districts that are supported, others not so much. So we need to get to those in Carlsbad and Cliff and, some more conservative communities. So let's amplify that voice and really make sure that all students get this. Otherwise, it's just the ones with the reasonable teachers. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
But for those of you, in terms of a call to action, engage help partnership with the county.
Hi. Better? Yeah. Okay. Engage spearheaded the Success Partnership, which is the county's prenatal to career education initiative, and it's a lot about systems work. So we've done a lot of early childhood work. The community schools in Las Cruces public schools were born in the Success Partnership. We recently launched, because the intention was to be prenatal to career, and so we recently launched the Kinder to Career Coalition countywide, and this is the kind of things we want to see. And so we have action networks that are starting to get to work on what are the initiatives and the things we really are, where we really want to see K-12 and our higher ed and our career readiness and workforce sectors integrating. And so this is a perfect example of how do we as a community come together and make sure those things are happening. So I would invite you, please come get involved in the Kinder Through Career Coalition, because that's, we want to see things like this succeed and get integrated to our teachers and make sure they get the professional development and all the support that they need, and to combat the inevitable conversations that are coming because of a curriculum like this that is, as Dulcinea said, beautiful, long overdue, and just absolutely incredible.
So question one, but I'll flip this around and offer a suggestion. And then my question is, how can students get involved? So I'm Cheryl Carrion, and I work for one of the programs that Victoria Tafoya, the Kellogg grant funded, as well as Engage in Success, and that's Community Share. And we connect classroom educators with community partners. And we have a lot of trouble getting community partners to step up and to say, I will come to a classroom. And so I offer a way to do that. And I'm here, I'll be here right after, and I have cards with the program on it. It's actually a platform so that any educator can reach out to you. And Kellogg just funded, and our mini grants for teachers just hit for the fall and the spring. And so let's talk about getting boxes out to educators, because we have mini grants that could probably help with that. And we are desperately seeking community partners. I know it's hard to get a hold of educators. I just retired after 31 years. It's, I kind of retired. You'll see me out and about with the Education Fellows program as well. But educators really need our support. They really don't go to the bathroom during the day, let alone have time for much else. And this program helps them access community partners. So come and talk to me, and let's talk about mini grants for the boxes, because I bet that is very feasible through the program. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? I'm not going to beg. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you to the Kellogg Foundation, to Engage, to the Devastali Fund and the Daniels Fund for helping to fund this project. We very much appreciate the support, and we appreciate the support of everyone who has come tonight. There is still food out there if you want to grab something on your way out. Also tea, coffee, lemonade, if there's anything left after I drink it. Thank you so much.